I am Nick Shell. I am the living legend of hair loss. I received a comment from our friend named Lelouch on a video I made called Being Saved from Hair Loss. Do you have to be right? Our friend asked this question, quote, Nick, I am a Norwood 3 and I'm age 23. Should I go for a hair transplant? I don't know what to do. Please help me. Here we go. So I'm going to help. And my advice is probably not going to be similar to most that you would find on the internet, on YouTube, because they have an agenda, and that is to push you into the clinics to get that hair transplant. So let's assess this. Norwood 3, age 23. I'm Norwood 2.5. We've got more of the V going on here, but then it rounds out and fades out there. But Norwood 3 would be definite more of just a strip here. So first of all, are you truly Norwood 3? A lot of people self-diagnose their Norwood situation and actually assess themselves to be worse than they actually are. I've seen quite a pattern of that. So let's assume though, what's the age difference? You're 23, I'm almost 38, so there's nearly a 15-year age difference in me and this viewer here. But assuming that they truly do have a Norwood 3, which would be worse than what you see here, and they're 15 years younger than me, what should you do? When I was 23, I knew, in my mind, I just knew that by the time I was in my 30s and married and had kids, that I'd be the exception to the rule. I would get a hair transplant. I wouldn't allow that to happen to me. I didn't want to ever be anything worse than a Norwood 3. And I'm still waiting on that day to happen. But what if you're younger than me and you truly are Norwood 3? What should you do? Well, my initial thought, and I haven't rehearsed this, I haven't practiced this, my initial thought is, if you truly are Norwood 3 at age 23, that's a good sign that you will be aggressively balding. Because one of my theories is age 35 determines basically your hair loss future. If you are noticeably balding by age 35, then you're probably going to be bald sooner in life. But if you still have most of your hair by age 35 and are not noticeably balding, chances are, if you are going to be balding the rest of your life, it's going to be at a much slower pace. So, knowing that is one of the teachings of Nick Shell, knowing that, if you're only 23 and you're truly Norwood 3, then, even with the hair transplant, let's say you get that taken care of, what happens in 5 years after that? What happens 10 years after that? Are you going to be in a situation where you're having to constantly keep getting new hair transplant every several years? Because ultimately, by age 35, you were meant to be Norwood 5, Norwood 4. So this is not a permanent fix to get a hair transplant, especially when you have aggressive balding. That's the thing to consider. And then there's the other thing to consider with a hair transplant, and that is, ultimately, are you going to be happy? Is it going to solve the problem, knowing that you're going to have to keep going? Is it going to be this burden that remains above you all the time, thinking how many more years to the next hair transplant? Or will the hair transplant stick? Will it work? Will it be a permanent fix? Do you want to have to deal with that your whole life? Or would you rather just think, you know what? It was determined in my DNA when I was woven in my mother's womb that ultimately I'm going to be the guy that's balding young. And though I wouldn't choose that, could I make that my identity since that is already in my genes? That's something you have to sort out and you have to figure out. Knowing what I know now as an almost 38-year-old, if I was in that situation at age 23, for me personally, I wouldn't get the hair transplant. I would shave it off. I would grow a beard. I would work out. And I would learn what actually attracts people, especially females, to males, knowing what I know now, that it's not really based on your looks, especially past high school. I know all these things and I talk about those things regularly on this channel. That's personally how I would assess the situation, knowing what I know now, trying to give you the brain transplant instead of the hair transplant. Now, this is my personal opinion. This is the foundation of this channel. We're looking at the psychology of hair loss. We're not looking at actually trying to solve the problem. But when someone asks me, what should I do about this hair transplant? That's initially my reaction. Now, what I would say at this point, if you haven't checked out Hairliciously, he's arguably one of the most, maybe the number. He's definitely, well, I'm in the top 5. He's in the top 5 hair loss YouTubers of the world. And he's got a channel talking about hair transplants. Definitely want to check out his channel for sure. So that's my reaction. Those are my thoughts. That's what I suggest to you. Should you get a hair transplant? Just imagine it's not as simple and easy as it sounds. You pay $10,000 and it solves your problems. It's not necessarily a permanent fix, and it's not necessarily going to actually solve the problem and even take. And ultimately, if you're always going to be worried about it the rest of your life, what if you just went the route that I explained, shaving your head, growing the beard, working out, and learning how to actually attract women beyond your looks? Because in reality, that's how the world actually works. But they won't tell you that when you're in your teenage years or early 20s. You have to have someone who's pushing 40 to be able to tell you that. It's one of those things. If only you knew then what you know now. Well, I know it now, and I'm telling you for then, you're then. Comments belong right here.